Standing by the Canadian monument on Hill 62 above Sanctuary Wood, today it's very hard to imagine how different this scene would have looked 100 years ago. Looking west, we can look down to the impressive towers of the rebuilt Eden. To the north, you can just see the Bellard Bridge on the other side of the Menin Road. To the east and south are beautiful wooded valleys. It was from here, on the Third Battle of Ypres, 31st of July 1917, that Ernest Hatton, a lance corporal in the Berkshire Regiment, attacked with his battalion.
Ernest Hatton worked on a farm in Ramsey 40-foot before signing up to join the Hunt Cyclists. His parents, William and Fanny, later moved into Ramsey and lived at 3 Longlands Yard. Ernest was transferred to the 6th Bedfordshires and sent to France.
On July the 31st, they had to move up through Sanctuary Woods towards the position they were meant to attack from, just the other side of the Menin Road. The battalion was swept with machine gun fire from the Germans, who still held the positions in the wood just uphill along the Menin Road. They finally made it to the line of shell holes 300 yards away facing Glencorse Wood. They advanced a further 150 yards towards the waves of machine gun fire coming from the wood, and further attempts to attack as planned were aborted, as those who did not take any cover immediately were shot down. They finished the day in front of Glencorse Wood, just west of the road that still runs from Menin Road to Westhook, at an area called Surbiton Villas. Today, much of the ground is occupied by the Bellwood theme park.
Ernest died at some stage during the attack. His body was never found and he is commemorated on the Menin Gate. Today, this area is very popular with walkers and cyclists, but it is very different from the reality of the 1917 battlefield. The woods comprised a tangled mess of tree trunks, smashed branches and shell holes, which along with the deep mud made progress by the troops extremely difficult.
Percy Bassett also served very close to where we are standing. Just to the west of us is Shrewsbury Forest, and his battalion, the 8th East Kent, attacked a strong point known as the Lower Star Post on the 10th of August. Nowadays, Lower Star Post is an intersection of several cycle routes through the woods.
It is very likely that Percy was one of those wounded in this unsuccessful attack, as he died 2 days later at the 3rd Canadian Casualty Clearing Station and is buried in the huge Lissenhook Cemetery near Poppering. Lissenhook lies on what the main road and rail transport line away from the front at Ypres. It became a site where casualty clearing stations became established from the beginning of the war. By 1917, the site had become the largest hospital site in the Ypres salient, and there was an even large vegetable garden planted to provide food for the staff and sick soldiers.
The site also became known as a research centre and was the first place where blood transfusions were carried out.
The cemetery quickly became established to accommodate those that died here. Today, nearly 11,000 victims are buried here, making it the largest hospital cemetery in the salient. However, 300,000 survived the ordeal and were treated and discharged between 1914 and 1920.
Like most of the Ramsey soldiers, Percy was a farm worker. One of the 8 children he had lived on Great White and the New Road for the war.
Now he lies here in farmland just outside the town of Poppering. Over a month later, the fighting was still counting in the woods to the east. The 1st Cambridgeshires were in the thick of the action, with a soldier from Ramsey St Mary's, James Dorks, amongst their ranks.
Brigadier General E. Riddle, CMG DSO, was the commanding officer of the 1st Battalion, the Cambridgeshire Regiment. He survived the war and wrote much of the regimental diary thereafter. His accounts of the area where his battalion was to attack at the end of September is one of the most descriptive to be seen in the regimental diaries.
Before Europe went mad, a traveller wending his way from Ypres to Heluvelt would pass through the sylvan lands bordering the land of the Baskerville Beak, from the high ground 1,000 yards northwest to Heluvelt. He would drop down to the valley across the stream and climb the gentle gradient to the village. The cultivated fields between the woodlands had given place to land bereft to vegetation. Below us a boggy swamp, devoid of any indication of human, animal or vegetable life, showed the course of the Baskerville Beak.
On September 26th, the Cambridgeshires had to attack from the marshy wasteland of the Baskerville Beak stream uphill to Joist Redoubt, a German fortification on top of the ridge. They were successful in capturing a particularly resilient pillbox, which was later renamed Riddle's Castle after their commander. Machine gun fire took a heavy toll and the battalion had a number of casualties, including George Dorks. His body was never found and he is remembered on the Tyncott Memorial.
Looking out over the valley today, you can appreciate the steepness of the valley from the vantage point where the Germans looked over the British troops. The beauty of the Baskerville Beak Valley had returned 100 years later.
It is just under 3 miles from Sanctuary Wood to Heluvelt, and in 3 months of the battle, our forces never got as far as that village. Another Ramsey man died close to the furthest point that our army got. Sidney Taylor was born on the 15th of August 1897 in Upwood. Later the family moved to the Farset Fen, and by 1911 John, working as a farm labourer, living at New Fen, Ramsey St Mary's. His parents later moved to Bluebell Inn at Ramsey 40foot.
Sidney enlisted in Ramsey in November 1915 and joined the 1st Battalion, Bedfordshire Regiment. He was sent to Flanders on the 24th July 1916.
Sidney was killed in action at Heluvelt on the 7th of October 1917. From the 4th to the 8th of October, the 1st Bedfordshires were holding the front line just north of the Menin Road, near Veladohoc. On the day that Sidney died, they were constructing a defensive system and digging new trenches.
Sidney was buried, along with others from his regiment, in Pillbox Cemetery, near where he fell. This was situated beside the Menin Road on the outskirts of Heluvelt. Sidney's body was exhumed after the war and moved just less than a mile down the Menin Road to Hoo Ha Crater Cemetery.